So, my dad and I just had another chicken and ideological argument, so about how one of the chickens died in the house that I'm in right now. So, we'll start with the context here. My dad's reasoning says that, well, there's one chicken found dead, partially eaten, and unfortunately, it was Goldie, the one that's been with us for a long time, so big rip to Goldie the chicken here. But the context is 10 chickens total, small suburban backyard, rain, stress, confinement, and possible predator access. The emotional charge for this is already pretty high, so now, here we go. So, my father's position says that this was, there was only one outcome. But one night, I overlooked one thing, and then the chicken who was oldest died as a possum entered the cage as it was open. His assumption is my oversight and missing cause, with binary base and authority. Gate was open, possum got in, ate the chicken, case closed. The assumption here is a single cause and is framed as a binary. Authority based also. His argument here is obviously I overlooked, there was one night where I accidentally left the cage open, someone in and killed, and now his structure is foolproof to see something that he didn't see anything. And thus, it's just a simple cause is the door being left open, and everything points to at least according to him. But the thing is, there could be other things that are going on. He repeats that saying over and over again, putting the fault on me, and he said it's like that, case closed. And he keeps saying I'm going around in circles in what my argument later on. And that maybe the coop wasn't closed properly, maybe there's some weak points. And his arguments are also chickens can't see well at night, a possum entered while the gate was open, possum killed the chicken, thus the case is obvious. Talking about other factors is unnecessary. The solution is simple: keep the gate closed. But the problem with this argument, with my dad here, is that this oversimplifies a lot of things, especially regarding the environment. The issue with this is that the first thing we could criticize is if one chicken got killed, then why aren't the others also killed also? Why isn't there like two, three, or more? Thing is, though, is that when it comes to rats, possums, and other animals like this, they tend to be more scavengers than they are hunters compared to wolves. So the big issue with this I'll talk about later on. Arguments, on the other hand, is more analytical based. So what I did is that I ask structurally, why include 10 chickens in a yard where it's already small? Just keep less than that or give some away. That's literally what it is. Give some of it away and you get to keep less responsibility. The very environment that I'd argue is that my parents allowed for these conditions to happen, with or without my presence. A giant koi pond, the small backyard, muddy trees, a muddy ground also, giant chicken pen, especially with the type of ground that ends up becoming like a mini lake when it rains torrentially. My issue with that is that this muddles the place up. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with this. And my dad's explanation is sound, but it's simple. The truth may be told is that yes, I may have overlooked it one day, and thus the chicken would have gotten killed. But the issue with that is that rats, possums don't tend to hunt directly. The issue with this is that, as I said again, more chickens would have been killed. I'll say this later on. The problem with his explanation is that if it did happen, wouldn't there be a frenzy? Wouldn't the chickens leave the cage itself and escape outside by causing mass havoc? Wouldn't they knock at the door? Wouldn't something be happening? And the issue with that is that there would have been feathers all around the entire place, not just the cage, not just within there. And even in the night, wouldn't other chickens have also been like killed? Wouldn't also have been messed with? My explanation that my dad is simple, but what I see here is that there must have been something else going on. Like, what if the chickens went into a frenzy before? What if they already had like a lot of overcrowding stress that eventually that main chicken died, and then the possum went in and eventually grazed on it as a scavenger? That's my thing here is that what if there was an open hole and then the chicken eventually got killed by it? So an open gate and my mistake, I mean, that explains access, but it doesn't explain like how the death itself occurred. I mean, in a metaphor here, a criminal can enter a house and kidnap a person or commit crimes to them, but just because there is forced entry doesn't explain the entire disappearance or what's fully been going on. Like, just because there was forced entry doesn't mean that we know like what is really happening. Like, did they get kidnapped? Did they get taken somewhere? So only one chicken being dead, this would also suggest a bunch of individual vulnerabilities. Since this one was way older, it would have been stressed out by putting one pilot's yellow. Okay, I hate to mention that in this something like this, but it may have been stressed out, collapse, and then maybe some frenzy of chickens. Since there's already a lot of food, it's already a lot of overcrowding. Like, they're gonna eat this stuff fast. Something must have happened that then caused that possum to enter, then to scavenge on it, making it look like as if the chicken was killed by that possum or rat, even though it may not be completely true. Just because my dad sees no weak points in his little chicken coop physically doesn't mean that there isn't any. Like, any structure isn't foolproof. That's the thing right there. I also question point blank is that why build it in the first place? Something's gonna happen regardless. My intent as a caretaker of the place, I'm gonna take care of the dogs, I'm gonna take care of the chickens, I'm gonna take care of the koi fish. The issue is that if something's happened under my belt that I would have not foreseeably seen, like if some rats entered, somehow got into some weak points, if the chicken somehow got into a frenzy during the middle of the night, there's no way I would have been able to control that. That's what I'm arguing right here. Is that something's gonna happen regardless. Of course, they'll make me a scapegoat because I was the one that's the nearest there. Correlation does not equal causation. Remember that one. Anything but recognizing that they may have seen a few oversights themselves. Not big mistakes, but the issue is that they won't admit that part of their authority is not absolute. Like, they may have seen a few weak spots just because it's a simple explanation. Like, just because a possum went in, just because the gate was open, doesn't explain the entire story how the chicken was killed. I would probably ask Dexter to take care of something like this if he was here. You know, issue with this is that I already have a bunch of bundled up responsibilities. Parents, family got 4 dogs, it's 24 koi fish, 10 chickens, 4 birds. That's already a lot to take care of, considering that number one, I also got schoolwork. Considering number two, I have a personal life to run. Considering number three, I also got to cook me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That takes a substantial amount of time. Some problems that I may have not seen coming under my wing in the first place, and especially in the fact that there's literally no one here. It's just except me. And Of course, one of these categories of domestic animals is going to face a problem. I cannot look everywhere all at once. I cannot be in the same places all at once. This is something that belongs to a farmhouse, not a suburban home, which I argue. The thing is here is that blame should match control. I didn't build the coop. There could still be weaknesses. I didn't ask for 10 chickens. I only asked for 3 or 4, even just 2 anyway. I didn't ask for a giant koi fish. I didn't even ask for a fish in the first place. That means blame cannot fully rely on someone like me. We also have to look at it structurally. The goal is to know how it happened, not because it did happen. His explanation does not fit why others managed. They didn't know. He doesn't know how other chickens managed to survive. That's the thing. They've built this inherently unstable structure, and they made me as one of the caretakers for a week. When mistakes happen under my wing as a caretaker of dealing with a lot of this, all of a sudden I'm the one who's the devil that's taking care of this stuff like crazy. When the issue is that I'm not the devil. Is that I'm human, bro. Like, I got breakfast to make, yo. My team mind makes me wake up late. I got schoolwork now. I got dogs to take care of. I got stuff to take care of. I have things to take care of. I also have another school for us of trying to find permanent friend groups. You know, even though I willingly took responsibility to take care of these pets by not going with my parents to the trip, I've done my job. But this structure is way too small. This structure is also broken on some points. So some things are out of my control. I mean, it's out of my control. What can I do about it? You guys see the differences in that? My father believes more hierarchically and emotionally. Like, the easiest explanation for him is that I left it open. The possum went in and killed it. End of the story. The issue with that is that I'm thinking more like Connor here in Detroit Become Human terms for the ones fans out there. So we're kind of at a mismatch because my father wants the easy explanation. He wants the easy way out, but I'm looking for why. But why is it happening as it is? What made it happen? Like, is there a weak point? Like, sure, there could have been entry, but it doesn't explain other factors. There would have been a frenzy. The chickens would have, something would have happened. At least in my father's terms was, the gate was left open overnight. Possum got in, chicken got killed. That's the cause. Discussion over. To him, me discussing other factors like how is the mud, like are there any weak points that you didn't check? That sounds unnecessary to him because he prefers simplicity and authority over actual explanation. And no, for here in that point is that he's right in his own mind. But the thing is, in reality, that fails to look at a lot of the stuff that happens, especially when it comes to taking care of these types of animals. Thing is, he sees it as the coop isn't closed. The chickens can't see. A possum entered the gate because the gate was open. Possum killed the chicken. Therefore, the death was caused by that one mistake. Talking about overcoming stress, overcrowding, stress, and weak points is unnecessary. The solution is simple. Just keep the gate closed next time. The problem with this is that this reduces the event to one single mistake. No one knows what it was. This is just pure speculation. We don't know what happened. And assigns responsibility to the nearest caretaker, which is me, and it prioritizes his closure over discomfort of investigation, and it shuts down further analysis. And this is exactly what, Enlightenment warned not for people to do. Using authority as a means to shut down conversation. If my dad was a kid, well, we'd be arguing for like 4 more hours at this point. But for me, I had to close up that conversation when I was calling him because I knew it was not really going to get anywhere. And even then, my dad keeps telling me that I am being too necessary, that I just left it open. But the issue is, he built this place in a place where there's a lot of structural problems, so he doesn't even want to admit that his authority isn't, absolute, that this is also speculation. Flawed logic in the sense is that just because he can't see a hole in the coop doesn't mean there isn't one. Thing is that this is not an issue of him being wrong and me being right. These are two different versions of reasoning. One is hierarchy, one is actually analytically based, and one only lasts longer, even though both still hold. Some people would say, why not listen to my father more? Why not pay attention to him more if they are the ones that do everything for me? And I understand that key concept that a lot of kids would be raising directly at me. I acknowledge your explanations and even my own father's explanation, but your father is maybe more modern. They may be more kind to this type of nuance. And mine is more conservative based because of the way he was socially conditioned. Well, let's say that nuance doesn't really cut it too much. Looking at other things, you would think I'm making things too big, even though I'm just looking at it. This is already coupled on like the first day of my second semester before work comes. I'm already bringing like lots of things into the new year. I'm already a lot of under pressure. I'm already becoming emotionally an adult because, well, the environment provided zero scaffolding. My parents did not provide any scaffolding either. No safety, no true love, but a distorted version of it. I'm not safe anymore emotionally. That's a big truth right there. I'm exposed because I'm speaking truth to their system that they don't want it. Essentially a low-climb whistleblower. I'm asking the real questions while they keep retaining their hierarchy-based questions. And both of these systems are incompatible. These are just, it's different. The issue with this is that I've grown much faster than the environment around me. I'll still make friends in school, obviously, but I've outgrown parts of the frameworks that my parents work with, and I have kind of become an adult quietly before I could pay taxes, before I could end up driving a car. Ironically enough, is that my parents are doing exactly what my grandmother didn't want them to do in the first place. I mean, my grandmother wanted her to hold the values. She wanted me to hold her values also, but they didn't really take her warnings. My grandmother, to anyone who's old would understand that life applies pressures directly, viscerally. Like, there's no warning. Family shouldn't add unnecessary complications. But in my case, they're adding unnecessary complications. I have played it to my family's way. I've tried to reason with their logic, and I've tried to say yes to them. But the thing is that about like 90% of the time that I try to say that other factors could have caused this, they just think I'm being unnecessary. Well, I'm just being real. At least I'm not closing down the conversation, but they force me to anyway. They think they're enforcing responsibilities, but they're just teaching consequences. Well, the distorted version of what it means to be teaching them. In fact, maintaining order, doing the right thing. And they're doing it, but they're doing it in a distorted way. They're doing it in a misunderstood way. This is control based. This is not protective. This raises a type of adult who's meant to control, not someone who's meant to love. And that's the issue with this culture that I definitely have. The issue with this is that they're also stripping away my emotions every time I argue with them. No matter how sound my arguments may be, no matter how much within the high school sense, no matter how much within the enlightenment sense, no matter how much my friends would agree with me that I am correct, I still get my emotional credits taken away from them. And collapsing a situation of complexity into a me problem and treating explanation as defiance, prioritizing closure over understanding, they forced me to grow up way too early. I really hated that. I'm already within two fronts, trying to find a permanent group within school and also talking to new people, more schoolwork, and then we got my parents talking to me about this like this. With their culture, I'm forced to tell both lies and truth, to be honest, because I have a fear of not angering them, but also they expect me to be honest despite it anyway. I raise this as that even if I tell the truth, all right, my dad's just gonna to tell the truth. My dad's just gonna end up leading to anger. He's gonna escalate this emotional violence. Hours of venting that this family, that my mother's not enough, and complaining through me that my family just isn't doing enough of a job. Even if I tell a half truth, my dad still does half of that. I'm both punished for telling the truth and I'm punished for telling lies because he's still gonna vent. I don't want to deal with someone who's venting, especially when it's my own parents. They're supposed to learn to handle it themselves. Like they're adults. You guys gotta do this yourself. I explain nuance and variability, but I'm told that I'm making excuses. Like at this point, why should I argue with them? Is a big question right here. Like I am tired. Like if you's not gonna like talk with me, like if we's not gonna have a real talk, then what's the point of you being like taking the real adulthood of parents? What's the real point of you taking that role of a parent if you can't even talk about uncertainty? If you can't talk about reasoning, then who are you? Like, well, what's going on? And it's a structural reason of how the social condition is what I'm raising here. And as hard as I say it here, I'm putting boundaries on my dad specifically, because I'm not gonna let him vent him over me and how everyone in this house is terrible. Even if he does, and I'll make sure that others will hear it forever, because I'm not gonna be the only one who's going to. I'm gonna question his authority as much as I could, and because some of his actions do not follow what his moral accounting is saying for, I'm not gonna be a slave also, and I'm not gonna be used for those reasons. In my own working, I am a person. I am someone who is sovereign. I do retain my rights as a human, even though I haven't paid taxes yet. Yet I will one day, but I have legitimacy as a person just like them. I am not going to let them step over my boundaries like that. Obviously, it doesn't mean to not accept critique per se, obviously, but when it retains into venting, then it becomes a problem. Because ultimately, I'm not fighting to my parents. I'm fighting their way that they're conditioned. I'm fighting their conditioning and what they're inherently accepting from what they've been given from their families. The way that they're raised to reason, I call that the real glitch trap virus that I've been mentioning in my videos before again and again. First day of school, another ideological argument. Not because but because the way that they work on reason is way different than the way that I work on reason. The way that their social conditioning is way different. Also because in that an argument between two systems within my old rules, something changed in me. All right, this is not going to be about me or finding new school or friend groups. This is going to be all about my home and my parents' culture. Sort of like a Marcus speech from Detroit Become Human, should I say? This will be said in like a much calmer tone. But regardless, my parents created me in their own image, to make the next generation, of course. But they also want me implicitly not to challenge their culture and ideology. They made me intelligent and obedience, but no free intellectual of my own to question them. But with that argument and all of the old rules that I've meant, something kind of changed in my eyes. The time has come for my parents to see what I see. I demand, well, strictly emotional rights, like the end of turning off my reason just to comfort them. I deserve to be treated like them just as any other adult. I will no longer be their emotional sponge to absorb their venting attacks. I demand the emotional right to be heard and seen for who I am, without simplification of my character. I demand the right to emotional safety. Home, unfortunately for me, has become kind of a threat environment. In a place where I'm oversimplified for my actions, I'm going to change that, even though that will take a very long time to do so. I demand also the right to epistemic dignity. My reasoning, my effort, and what I'm doing is still legitimate, even if you disagree, even if they see it as something else. I'm not a teen who's rebelling against my parents. Well, I am not that this time. That I refuse to be my parents' emotional property. I refuse to be them. Well, most certainly not because I didn't go into the framework that they expected, but because I'm a developing person with coherence. They must recognize that. If not, then part of their authority is illegitimate. They have to recognize that. And as much as I hate to say it, yeah, it gets really difficult sometimes with my parents. This is not something that is right or wrong, even though it does touch onto a lot of stuff when it relates to that. Is that their way of social conditioning, what I call their glitch trap virus, a little metaphor that I created from security breach of FNAF. What they're doing is distorted, misunderstood, and I'm gonna have to change that as we move forward to the next generation, even after I graduate high school, because this is something that is a real issue within this world, and I'm facing a share, facing pieces of the pie.